My wife left me and our two kids for a 26-year-old barista, and the wildest part is she didn't even feel guilty about it because a group of women on the internet told her it was empowering. I'm Daniel. I'm 41, and I never thought I'd be that guy sitting alone in what used to be our bedroom trying to figure out when exactly my marriage turned into a social media post about radical self-love. But here we are. Marissa didn't leave because she fell out of love. She left because she got convinced that being a mother and a wife meant she had lost herself. And apparently finding herself meant abandoning everything we built together over 13 years. I'm not here for sympathy, and I'm not here to trash her. I just need to get this out because what happened over the past 2 years has been so surreal that sometimes I wake up thinking it was all some kind of twisted dream. We had two kids who are now 11 and 13. We had a house in a decent neighborhood, stable jobs, the kind of life that doesn't make for interesting stories at dinner parties, but felt solid and real. I'm a project manager for a construction firm. Marissa worked part-time as a graphic designer from home, and we had our routine like every other family. I thought we were fine, maybe not fireworks every day, but fine in that comfortable way that comes with years of knowing someone. About 2 years ago, Marissa started saying she didn't know who she was anymore, and at first I figured it was just stress or maybe she needed a hobby, so I suggested she take up painting again like she used to do in college. She looked at me like I had just suggested she learn to juggle chainsaws and told me I didn't get it, that she wasn't talking about hobbies. She was talking about her identity. I didn't get it. She was right about that. But I tried to listen and be supportive because that's what you do when your partner is struggling. She started spending more time online, joining these women's groups on social media, reading articles about feminine awakening and patriarchal structures. And look, I'm all for women supporting women, but something about these groups felt different. They weren't talking about careers or equal pay or anything concrete. They were talking about how marriage itself was a trap, how motherhood was a societal construct designed to suppress female potential, how women needed to choose themselves first always. Marissa started using phrases that sounded like they came straight from a self-help book written by someone who had never actually dealt with real-life responsibilities, saying she was reclaiming her narrative and refusing to be defined by roles others gave her. And every time I tried to talk to her about it, she'd say I was being dismissive of her journey. The turning point came when she joined what she called a feminist self-healing collective, which as far as I could tell was just 6 women who met twice a week at a coffee shop downtown to talk about how oppressed they were. And I want to be clear here. I'm not mocking feminism or women's issues. I'm talking specifically about this group that seemed more like a support group for people who wanted permission to blow up their lives. One of the women in the group had recently left her husband, another was separated, and they all seemed to feed off each other's stories about liberation and finding themselves, like they were competing to see who could reject traditional life the hardest. Have you ever watched someone you love get pulled into something and felt completely powerless to stop it? That's what those months felt like. Marissa came home from these meetings glowing with this manic energy, talking about breakthroughs and realizations. And when I asked what specifically she was realizing, she'd get vague and say she was learning that she mattered, which always confused me because I never thought she didn't matter. Our kids started noticing that mom was different. She was physically present but emotionally somewhere else. And my daughter asked me one night why mommy seemed sad all the time, which broke my heart because Marissa wasn't sad. She was just so caught up in this idea of self-discovery that she had stopped actually seeing the people right in front of her. Then Leo entered the picture, and honestly, I didn't think much of it at first. He was 26, worked at the same coffee shop where her group met, had that whole artist vibe with the man bun and the vintage band shirts, and Marissa mentioned him a few times as someone who understood her creative side. I wasn't worried because I trusted her, and also because Leo seemed like exactly the kind of guy who would never want the responsibility of a real relationship. But I underestimated how attractive the idea of starting over can be when someone keeps telling you that your current life is holding you back. Marissa started staying out later after her group meetings, saying she was networking with other designers. And I believed her, because why wouldn't I? We had 13 years of marriage and 2 kids and a mortgage. You don't throw that away for a barista with a philosophy degree. But she was pulling away in ways that were impossible to ignore. She stopped asking about my day, stopped caring about the kids' school events, stopped being present at dinner. And when I finally confronted her about it, she told me, I can't keep living for everyone else. I need to live for me. I remember standing in our kitchen thinking that taking care of your family isn't living for everyone else. It's just called being an adult. But I didn't say that because I could see she was looking for a fight, looking for a reason to paint me as the bad guy. The night she told me she was leaving, she didn't yell or cry or apologize. She just said very calmly, "I'm choosing myself. Daniel, this isn't about you or the kids. This is about me finally being honest about what I need." And when I asked what about what our kids need, she said they'll understand eventually. They'll thank me for showing them what it means to be authentic. I stood there watching her pack a suitcase with this sick feeling in my stomach, not angry yet, just this overwhelming confusion about how we got here. She moved in with Leo 3 days later, didn't even get her own place, just went straight from our family home to his tiny apartment above a record store. The kids asked where Mommy went, and I told them she needed some time to figure things out, which was the truth even if it wasn't the whole truth. And my son, who was 11 at the time, asked, "Is it because of us?" And I had to sit both of them down and explain that sometimes adults make choices that don't make sense, but it's never the kids' fault, never ever. Marissa came by the next week to see the kids, and she brought Leo with her, which felt like a slap in the face, but I kept my cool because the kids were watching, and she introduced him as her friend who was helping her through a difficult time, like I was the difficult time she needed help getting through. I watched my daughter's face when she saw this stranger in our driveway, and I saw the exact moment she understood that everything had changed, that Mom wasn't coming back, that this was the new reality. Marissa started posting on social media about her journey. These long captions about breaking free from societal expectations and choosing radical self-love, and her friends from the group would comment with praise about how proud they were and how she was glowing. While I was at home meal prepping for the week and helping with homework and trying to explain to two confused kids why their mother chose herself over them. Looking back now, I can see all the warning signs I missed, the way she stopped asking about our future together, the way she talked about her life instead of our life, the way she started viewing every family responsibility as a burden instead of just part of being a parent. But in the moment, I kept thinking this was just a phase, that she'd snap out of it once she realized what she was throwing away. I was wrong. She was just getting started, and I had no idea how much worse things were about to get. The first month after Marissa left was the hardest, not because I missed her, but because I had to become two parents overnight while pretending everything was going to be okay. I took over the morning routines, the school drop-offs, the homework checks, the doctor appointments, the parent-teacher conferences, all the invisible labor that Marissa used to handle while I was at work, and I realized pretty quickly that I had no idea how much she actually did before she decided none of it mattered anymore. My daughter started having nightmares about her mom forgetting her. My son became quiet and withdrawn in a way that scared me, and I spent my evenings researching child psychologists while meal prepping lunches for the week because there literally weren't enough hours in the day. Marissa would text occasionally asking how the kids were doing, sending messages about how she was thinking of them, and sending them love and light, which sounds nice until you realize that love and light doesn't help with math homework or explain why Mommy isn't coming to the school play. She'd schedule visits and then cancel last minute because Leo had surprised her with a weekend trip or because the self-healing group was having a special workshop. And every time I had to tell the kids that Mom couldn't make it again, I watched a little piece of their hope die. Something told me I needed to start keeping track of everything, not because I was planning legal action yet, but because some instinct said this might matter later. I kept a simple calendar marking which days she was supposed to visit and which days she actually came. I saved every text where she canceled or rescheduled. I noted every time the kids asked about her and what I told them. Just facts, no editorial, just the truth of what was happening. For months after she left, Marissa called me sounding more excited than I'd heard her in years, talking fast about new beginnings and symbolic fresh starts. And then she told me she was pregnant. I didn't say anything for a long moment because I was doing the math in my head, realizing she'd gotten pregnant pretty quickly after moving in with Leo. And when I finally asked if she was sure about this, she said, "This baby is a symbol of my rebirth. Daniel, this is me creating life on my own terms." I wanted to point out that she already created life on her own terms twice, and those kids were currently asking me every night when she'd come home, but I just congratulated her and hung up. The self-healing group threw her a celebration, posting pictures on social media of Marissa glowing in a flower crown talking about divine feminine energy and the power of choosing yourself. And I'm looking at these photos thinking about how my daughter cried herself to sleep the night before because she thought Mom didn't love her anymore. Would you keep supporting someone who celebrated their new life while ignoring the kids they left behind? Because her so-called support system sure did. Leo started pulling away around her 7th month. You could see it in the photos Marissa posted. He was there, but not really there, standing slightly apart, checking his phone, looking like a guy who just realized that ideals about freedom and self-discovery don't pay for diapers. Marissa started posting less about liberation and more about the challenges of preparing for a baby, looking for recommendations for affordable cribs, and asking if anyone knew of part-time work-from-home jobs that were pregnancy-friendly, and the self-healing group went mysteriously quiet in the comments. Nobody was offering to help with baby supplies. Nobody was volunteering to throw a baby shower. They were all very supportive of the idea of her choices, but apparently not the reality of them. I should have felt vindicated, but I just felt tired. Watching this woman I'd spent 13 years with slowly realized that Instagram feminism doesn't keep the lights on. She reached out to her parents asking for financial help, and they told her they'd be happy to help their grandchildren, meaning our two kids, but they weren't going to fund her new life with a guy barely older than their nephew, which Marissa took as a betrayal and posted a long thing about how society punishes women for being honest. The baby was born in month 12, a boy, and suddenly Marissa was dealing with the reality of a newborn in a tiny apartment with a partner who had checked out emotionally and a support system that had evaporated the moment real help was needed. She started calling me more often, not to talk about our kids, but to vent about Leo, about how he wasn't stepping up, about how she felt alone, about how this wasn't what she thought it would be, and I'd listened because that's what I do, but I never offered solutions because these weren't my problems to solve anymore. My lawyer had been telling me for months that I should file for primary custody, that I had more than enough documentation showing I was the stable parent, but I kept hesitating because I didn't want to be the guy who weaponized the courts against his ex. I wanted Marissa to step up on her own. But she wasn't stepping up. She was barely keeping her head above water, missing more visits, showing up late when she did come, looking exhausted and distracted, and my kids were getting anxious every time they were supposed to see her because they never knew if she'd actually show. I finally filed for primary custody 14 months after she left, not out of revenge, but out of necessity, because my kids needed stability and they weren't getting it from her. The court process was surprisingly straightforward. My lawyer presented the calendar of missed visits, the text showing cancellations, the documentation of me handling every aspect of the kids' lives while Marissa was focused on her journey, and her lawyer didn't have much to counter with except arguments about how she was going through a transitional period and deserved grace. The judge looked at the evidence, looked at Marissa, asked her directly how many of her scheduled visits she'd actually kept in the past 6 months, and when she couldn't give a straight answer, I saw his expression change. He granted me primary physical custody with Marissa getting visitation every other weekend, and she walked out of that courtroom looking like she'd been slapped. She didn't talk to me for 2 weeks after the hearing, and when she finally did, it wasn't to apologize or to ask about the kids. It was to tell me, "You're punishing me for choosing myself. Daniel, you're using the system to hurt me." And I remember thinking that I didn't need to use anything to hurt her. She was doing that perfectly well on her own. Leo left a month after the custody hearing, just moved out while she was at work, left a note saying he couldn't do this anymore, couldn't be responsible for a kid that wasn't his and a girlfriend who was drowning in regret disguised as empowerment. And Marissa called me sobbing, actually sobbing for the first time since this whole thing started. She asked if she could come over, said she needed to talk, and I told her, "We can talk about the kids anytime. But if you need someone to process your relationship drama with, that's not my job anymore." The self-healing group had completely disappeared by this point. No more meetings, no more supportive comments, just silence from the women who had cheered her on when she was blowing up her life, but had nothing to offer when she was living in the wreckage. Here's what I learned from watching this unfold. When people build their identity around rejecting responsibility, they attract others doing the same thing. And when reality hits, that whole support system collapses because it was never built on anything real to begin with. It was built on validating each other's avoidance. Marissa moved into a cheaper apartment, started working full-time again out of necessity, found childcare for her baby, and slowly started trying to rebuild some kind of relationship with our kids, showing up more consistently for her visits, actually asking them about school and their lives. But the damage was done. Our daughter was polite but distant. Our son was guarded, and they both knew on some level that I was the one who'd been there all along. I started seeing someone new around this time, a woman I met through work named Rebecca, nothing serious at first, just coffee and conversations with someone who didn't come with years of baggage, and it felt strange to laugh again, to have an adult conversation that wasn't about custody schedules or missed visits. I didn't tell Marissa, and I definitely didn't introduce Rebecca to the kids for months because I wanted to be sure, wanted to protect them from any more instability. Then Marissa found out I was seeing someone. I don't know how, maybe mutual friends, or maybe she saw something on social media. And that's when she reached out asking to meet, saying, We need to talk, Daniel. Please, I know I don't deserve it, but I need you to hear me out. I looked at that text for a long time before responding, and I realized something important. She still didn't get it. Even after everything, she still thought this was about her. I met Marissa at a coffee shop 6 months after Leo left, neutral territory, because I didn't want her in my house, and she didn't want me in hers. And when she walked in looking tired in a way that had nothing to do with lack of sleep, I felt nothing, not anger, not sympathy, just this flat acknowledgement that we were strangers now. She ordered a tea she didn't drink and spent the first 5 minutes apologizing, not for leaving, not for abandoning our kids, but for how things had turned out, like our marriage ending was some kind of natural disaster nobody could have prevented instead of a series of choices she made deliberately. She told me she'd been doing a lot of thinking, a lot of self-reflection, and she wanted me to understand that she never meant to hurt anyone. She was just trying to be true to herself. And I sat there thinking about all the times our daughter asked if mommy still loved her while Marissa was being true to herself with a 26-year-old. She said Leo leaving had been a wake-up call, that she realized she'd been chasing an idea instead of dealing with reality, and she wanted to do better, wanted to be better for our kids, wanted me to see that she was trying. I told her I could see she was trying, and that was good for the kids, that consistent visits and actual presence in their lives was what mattered, and she looked at me like I'd missed the point of everything she just said. Then she got to the real reason she wanted to meet, asking if there was any chance, any possibility, that we could try again, not jump back into marriage obviously, but maybe start over, take things slow, see if we could rebuild what we had. I stared at her for a long moment trying to figure out if she was serious, and when I realized she was, I asked her why she thought I would want that, why she thought 13 years of marriage and 2 kids wasn't enough of a try, why she thought I'd be interested in being her backup plan now that her adventure had failed. She got defensive immediately, saying it wasn't like that, saying she wasn't asking me to rescue her. She was asking if I still believed in our family, and I told her, I believe in our kids, Marissa, I believe in being their father, but you and me? That ended when you chose yourself. She started crying then. Not the manipulative kind of crying, but the genuine kind that comes from finally understanding you can't undo what you've done, and she said I was being heartless, that I was punishing her for being honest about her needs. I leaned back and said I wasn't punishing her for anything. I was just not volunteering to be hurt again, and there's a difference between punishment and boundaries. She brought up the kids, saying they deserved to have both parents together, that an intact family was better for them. And I reminded her that she was the one who decided an intact family wasn't enough, that she was the one who chose to blow everything up because some women on the internet told her she was oppressed. Marissa switched tactics then, trying a different approach, saying the courts were unfair to mothers, that the system was designed to punish women who didn't fit traditional roles, that I had used my privilege to take her children away. I let her finish and then very calmly laid out the facts, how she'd missed over 60% of her scheduled visits in the first 6 months, how she'd canceled on the kids' birthdays, how she'd been so focused on her rebirth that she forgot she already had 2 humans who needed her, and I asked her which part of that was the system being unfair versus her just not showing up. She didn't have an answer for that. She just sat there looking at me like I was supposed to absolve her, supposed to tell her it was okay, and we all make mistakes, and let's just move forward, but I was done absolving her. The custody arrangement stayed as it was, and over the next few months Marissa did actually start showing up more consistently, spending time with the kids, asking about their lives, being present in the small ways that matter, but she never stopped looking at me like I was the villain in her story. I introduced Rebecca to the kids around this time, 8 months into our relationship, and they liked her because she didn't try too hard, didn't try to be their mom, just treated them like people and let relationships develop naturally. Rebecca was a civil engineer, steady and calm, and everything Marissa wasn't, and she understood that the kids came first, that building trust takes time, that you can't rush healing. Marissa found out and sent me a long text about how I was replacing her, how I was showing our kids that people are disposable, how I was modeling unhealthy relationship patterns, and I didn't respond because engaging with that level of projection felt pointless. The kids adjusted, slowly. They had their routines with me, their scheduled time with Marissa, their lives moved forward the way kids' lives do, with remarkable resilience when given stability. Our daughter started playing soccer again, something she'd quit when Marissa left because she was too anxious to focus on anything. And watching her score her first goal with me and Rebecca cheering from the sidelines felt like a small victory against everything that had tried to break her. Our son started opening up more, talking about his feelings, processing what had happened with the help of the therapist I'd found. And he told me one day that he understood now that mom's choices weren't about him, weren't about any of us. They were about her. And I was proud of him for figuring that out at 13 years old, even though it broke my heart that he had to. Marissa continued her narrative on social media, posting about the challenges of co-parenting with a difficult ex, about how society punishes women for choosing authenticity, about bias in family courts, and her few remaining friends from the self-healing group would comment supportive things while having no idea what actually happened. She never posted about the visits she missed, never mentioned why custody was awarded the way it was, never acknowledged that she'd chosen a man she barely knew over her own children. It was always about what was done to her, never what she had done. I ran into one of her friends from that group at the grocery store once, and she gave me this look of pure judgment, like I was the man who crushed a woman's spirit, and I wanted to tell her the whole story, but I didn't because people believe what they want to believe, and I was tired of defending myself. What would you have done in that moment? Confronted her with the truth, or just let it go? I chose my peace over proving myself to strangers. Rebecca and I got engaged 2 years after we started dating. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet proposal at home. And when I told the kids, they were excited in that cautious way kids are when they've learned that good things can disappear. Marissa heard about it through the kids and called me angry, asking how I could move on so fast, how I could bring another woman into our children's lives, how I could just replace her like she never mattered. And I told her, I'm not replacing you, Marissa. You did that yourself when you decided being their mother wasn't enough. She said I was heartless, said I never really loved her if I could move on this easily. And I said, I loved you for 13 years. I loved you through every version of yourself you showed me. But I'm not going to love you through the version that abandons our kids. That's where I draw the line. That was the last real conversation we had. Everything after that was logistics and schedules and information about the kids, polite and distant like strangers coordinating shared responsibilities. The kids are doing well now. They have therapy, they have routines, they have a father who shows up and a stepmother who's kind, and a mother who visits on weekends and tries in her own limited way. Marissa still posts sometimes about her journey, about lessons learned, about the cost of authenticity, but she never quite admits what she actually did, never quite takes full responsibility, just hints at having paid a heavy price for being true to herself. She still has her baby with Leo, raising him alone, working full-time and doing the single mom thing she'd somehow thought wouldn't be hard. And I wonder sometimes if she ever connected the dots, if she ever realized that what she ran away from was exactly what she ended up with, just with less support and more judgment. I don't think she's a bad person. I really don't. I think she's someone who got sold a lie about what freedom means, and by the time she figured out it was a lie, she'd already burned everything down. But understanding someone's mistakes doesn't mean volunteering to live with the consequences of them. And I'd done that for 13 years already. Here's what I want you to take away from this story, because I've had 2 years to think about it. Real love isn't about grand gestures or finding yourself or choosing yourself first. It's about showing up on the boring days. It's about doing the dishes and helping with homework and being there when your kid has a nightmare. It's about building something together instead of constantly looking for what you're missing. Marissa thought she was being brave by choosing herself, thought she was breaking free from oppression, but all she really did was trade one set of responsibilities for another while losing the people who actually mattered. The irony is that she ended up exactly where she started, a working mom dealing with the daily grind of raising a kid, except now she's doing it alone without the support system she destroyed. She said she chose herself, said it like it was this revolutionary act, and maybe in her mind it was, but I chose our kids. I chose to be the parent who stayed, who showed up, who did the unglamorous work of actually raising them. And looking at my daughter laughing at dinner, at my son doing his homework without anxiety, at the life we've built from the wreckage she left behind, I know which choice was worth defending. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do isn't walking away from your responsibilities. It's staying and honoring them. It's being the person your kids can count on when everything else falls apart. And that's the lesson I hope my kids take from all of this. Not that their mother was wrong or bad, but that real strength comes from commitment, not from running away when things get hard. What do you think about this story? Let me know in the comments, drop a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories.